Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com. Now, some of you have noted that I've expressed a certain coolness towards the work of John Eliot Gardiner, which is true. And most recently, one of you asked, don't you like anything Gardner did? Well, that is absolutely, I think, an unfair question, because anyone who knows my work, anybody who knows my work knows that I have quite often praised John Eliot Gardiner's work, quite a bit of it, because quite a bit of it is splendid. But the question is, has there ever been a really recommendable Gardner box? Because last we got the giant DG/archive Gardner box thing, which had some good stuff and some not so good stuff. And what we really need to see is Decca's box, because Decca's box is going to have a lot of the good stuff in it. And of course, an errato box. The thing about Gardner, which is so problematic, well, there are two things. Number one is that, like so many people in the 70s, 80s, 90s, in that period, he recorded way too much. And he was practically a house conductor. I mean, he was just doing everything for multiple labels. He had exclusive deals basically with none of them, and was making recording after recording after recording. And then, of course, like so many period instrument people, he stepped into normal repertoire with Deutsche Grammophon, with the North German Radio Orchestra, and even some of the Vienna Philharmonic, and thereby demonstrating that he really should have stayed within his Fach. And the reason for that is because, as an interpreter, Gardner tends towards coolness. He can be very, very exciting when, dealing with period instruments and using period trumpets and drums. And in his Mozart operas, for example, they can be absolutely marvelous. And he's a wonderful accompanist with the Monteverdi choir, dealing with, things that involve vocal participation. In instrumental music or orchestral music, he's a bit less successful. And it's not really surprising, because he is one of those choral conductor guys, basically, and a lot of them are not so good when they're doing regular music. That doesn't mean he hasn't made the occasional good recording. He has. Everybody does. You got to remember, you do enough stuff, chances are some's going to be good. But he did really quite a bit of good stuff. And there is a box, I think, and this is what I want to tell you about, that represents a lot of his best stuff. It's extremely well curated. The selection is excellent, and it's on Deutsche Grammophon, even though some of the things that it has in it were not, I think, originally DG recordings, but that's okay. Maybe all of it was, I don't know. Most of it was, but here it is. It's called the John Eliot Gardiner Collection. Why? Because it's a collection of John Eliot Gardiner. It has 30 CDs, and like all of the things worth purchasing, it went out of print very, very quickly, because the only things that stay in print are the things that people don't buy because they suck, at least when it's a limited edition, and so they tend to hang around. Eventually, I'm sure Decca and Phillips will get around to doing their box, like I said, and some of this stuff may be in it, and it will be worth having. But let's look at this. It's one of these things. So you have to be very careful taking it off the shelf, because otherwise, that will happen, as I pointed out. And, that will be most unfortunate. But let's just go through it very, very quickly, and I'll tell you what's in it. And you'll see it's got a lot of really good stuff, but it's also stuff that reveals Gardner's strengths and weaknesses as an interpreter. So, let's see, where are we here? Okay, so here we go. Let me just try and divide this up. It's in pieces. So I want to get original covers and that kind of stuff. All right, we start with the Monteverdi Vespers. Now, Gardner has the Monteverdi choir and orchestra for good reason, because he's a Monteverdi guy, and his Vespers are marvelous. This is his second recording. Some people have said it's a little bit too theatrical and too sumptuous and too, this and too that. And it's just so typical that people bitch about the fact that Gardner tends to be rather straight-laced and not terribly colorful and whatever. And then when he is, they complain. Give him credit. It's a wonderful performance. It really is. Oh, and then Purcell, the Fairy Queen. This is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. A gorgeous recording. I remember when this came out in its beautiful, shiny archive box, and I just I just kept it underhand and carried it around for a while because I just thought it was so beautiful. It's actually 2 discs. Here's the first one. I got them mixed up with the Monteverdi Vespers, but that's CD4. So the Fairy Queen, absolutely essential and a landmark recording in its way for being so complete and so well realized. It's just beautiful. Then we get Bach, the St. Matthew Passion. Now, the St. Matthew Passion is really, really good. This is, again, interpretively, there are versions that are a little bit more sort of creaky and Germanic sounding, but this is a lively and dynamic and indeed dramatic version of the St. Matthew Passion. Extremely well sung. Very, very beautiful. Nothing wrong with it at all. See how well we're doing? Oh, and look, these are Philips recordings, which are now Decca recordings, which are being issued on DG. And when you see a box like this, you realize, of course, they could do this all along. Why don't they just take all the best stuff and throw it in a box, right? Wouldn't that be nice? Instead of having the DG one, which artificially preserves a label identity that none of these labels have anymore. That's what was so silly about the DG box. I mean, if you're going to do like 90 CDs of Gardner, at least make most of them the best stuff, or do twice as many and just throw everything in a box and say the hell with it, instead of dividing it up by label identities when they've already shown their willingness to completely ignore that. So here it is, Handel's Jephthah. It's impossible to say Jephthah. Gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It's Handel's last oratorio. It's a wonderful, wonderful piece, and this is its best performance. Yay, Mr. Gardner. Good job. Also, a fabulous job is Gluck. Gardner did quite a bit of Gluck, and Gluck is such a neglected composer still. People still don't get him because he didn't write operas that have big arias. They're kind of in the French style. It's continuous music, but they are dramatic and thrilling and full of glorious, glorious, glorious music, and they move quickly. They really do. They're not dull. They're not stiff. They're not any of those things. They're full of passion, and this is Iphigenia en Tauride with Diana Montague and John Aller and Thomas Allen. And it's just terrific. I love this opera, and I love this performance of it. Very, very beautiful. So, those are those. Now, let us continue with another pile. This is actually the last pile. We get, let's see, oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, hot stuff. Mozart E Dominato. Now, Gardner's Mozart operas may be the best things he ever did. His Don Giovanni is spectacular, and so is this E Dominato. It's really, really, really good. E Dominato is tremendously long. It's the kind of thing Gardner likes because he gets to choose between editions and do like bonus tracks. He likes to do all that stuff. But anyway, this is a great performance of a magnificent opera. I mean, it doesn't really work on stage terribly well. It has to be cut because it's so long and it's got so much music in it. Mozart really got carried away. When Mozart gets carried away, we benefit. And E Dominato is just glorious, absolutely glorious. All right, so that's wonderful. Then we get the Mozart piano concertos with Malcolm Bilson. Very, very good Mozart piano concerto cycle. Again, Gardner is spectacular when he's accompanying. He really is. When he has to take center stage himself, sometimes less so. But this is a beautiful Mozart concerto cycle. This is Concertos 20 and 21. They are absolutely first class of their kind, of the period instrument type, and I love them. I love the series. It's very, very good. So there's that. Next, see how much fun we're having? I told you, there's great stuff in here. Haydn's The Seasons, an excellent Seasons. Here, however, we begin to see the chink in Gardner's armor, and he does have a chink. In fact, he has more than a chink. He has a gaping crevasse, a cavern, and that's this. He has no sense of humor at all. His music making is always and almost invariably resolutely unsmiling. Now, he could have singers who know how to put the smile in it. You could have soloists who know how to put the charm in it. But for Gardner, no. When the composer wants humor or charm, Gardner offers efficiency. And the one point where we see that so clearly is in the conclusion of Autumn. The peasant celebration with the bagpipes and all that fun stuff where the chorus is drunk, and Gardner just basically whizzes through it. And it's a shame because he could have made so much of it. So much of this is really beautiful. It's wonderfully sung. The playing, as typically with Gardner, is firm and incisive, and the instruments are colorful. But when Haydn wants you to have a good time, Gardner is not having a good time. Gardner is sticking out his stiff something or other, but it's not the good time. Then we have this Beethoven Leonora and Leonora, yes, which was Fidelio before it became Fidelio. This is the best version of it out there. It really is, on the whole. The cast is quite good. It's let's see, Hilevi Martin Pelto, Martin Pelto, and Christiana Ulze and Kim Begley, and it's really, really good. If you want Leonora, I happen to think that Fidelio is about 1,000 times better than the original Leonora, but Beethoven completists will want it, and that's fine. Then we get the Missa Salemnus. Now this, I find this to be just a little bit stiff and just a little bit more efficient than Transfigured or Exalted. Gardner wrote that book full of hooey on Bach, Music in the Castle of Heaven, where he loves to talk about transcendental, transfiguring, whatever, and all that folderol, but he doesn't conduct that. He just does this very good, technically, good singing, but it just doesn't have what I consider to be the sort of spiritual repose that you need in the Sanctus in certain moments like that. He's real good in the Agnus when the trumpets and drums are happening, but others may like it better than I do. Then we get the Symphony Fantastique. Now remember, there was sort of a Symphony Fantastique on period instrument contest. It started out with like Norrington and this one. They came out sort of around the same time. And everybody talked about the Erard harps and the small bore trombones and how periody it sounded. We all bought them and we all wanted to hear the tinkly Erard harps and the small bore trombones. And you know what they sounded like? They sounded like tinkly harps and smaller trombones. Who cares? If you want to have a Symphony Fantastique that's going to rip your flay your skin and make you crazy, you got to get Munch. I mean, we all know that. One of the Boston ones, preferably the second one, which has a finale which is hallucinatory to the nth degree. And if you want the more precise, technically precise but still very effective and colorful version, you get Markevich with L'Amoureux. Or there's, for those of you who like woodwind playing, there's Colin Davis in the Concerto, although I've never liked that performance as much as some of you have said you did. This is good. It's, Gardner had a level of efficiency that he almost never fell below. But does this just excite you? No, I don't think so. I don't think it does. But what really bugs me about this is that what they should have had instead of this was the Berlioz Messe Solennelle, which is not in this box because this is a Philips recording. It could have been, and that was important. That was a world premiere. That was exciting. That was really a discovery. It's never been better done. It's the best version of that out there. And of course, you get some of the tunes that later reappeared in the Symphony Fantastique, like the main theme of the slow movement. So it really is a little bit disappointing that was stuck in there. It may be one of the few mistakes in putting this box together. Then we get a couple of very, very interesting, I think. What is this thing? Oh, look at that. You get the whole sucker here. Yeah. Wow, that's a long disc. 81 minutes. Okay, never mind. We'll get there. Schumann. A very enterprising disc. You get Das Paradies und die Peri, the oratorio thing, which has beautiful things in it. It's colorful. It's a real rediscovery of the Schumann work. It reminds me a little bit of Benjamin Britten doing the Schumann scenes from Goethe's Faust, which was also a wonderful performance of a sadly neglected work. And you also get the Requiem for Mignon and the Nachtlied. and you get the Fourth Symphony in its original version. And it's wonderful to hear this because Gardner is so good in the choral music and so uninteresting in the symphony. And it's fascinating, too, how people talk about period instruments, particularly period instrument Schumann, allows you to hear more detail and such the balances and this, nonsense. Nonsense. This is neither more transparent nor more interesting than any other performance of the Fourth Symphony, and a lot less interesting than most. And one of the things, although you do get the original version, which is, it has some different transitions and different orchestration and whatnot. But for the choral stuff, absolutely first rate. Then, and this is sort of the exception that proves the rule, one of those deals, the Verdi Requiem. It's on one disc, 81 minutes. This is hot. This Gardner just comes alive. This is a really terrific, red-blooded, meat and potatoes Verdi Requiem. It's got real red blood running through it. It's really exciting. And the period instruments sound just terrific. Valve trombones. Valve trombones are wonderful in the DS era. You actually notice them, sort of, kind of, if you know they're there. Valve trombones, by the way, for those of you who don't care, trombones go like this, right? They got a slide thing. But Italian trombones were like trumpets. They had valves. And that meant that you could play chromatic runs on them rather easily, like when they when they go, like in Otello. It was a very peculiarly toned brass instrument, which has since fallen by the wayside. But there is a case to be made for reviving it, and I love the sound of them here. And it's really, really excellent. And the singing here is just terrific, absolutely terrific. So one of the great Verdi Requiems, in my opinion, and one of the absolute high points of Gardner's discography. I'm happy to say. Well, after the happy stuff, things get a little less happy. We have this thing, which I just talked about in one of those endless DG conductor boxes or something like that. This is the Elgar in the South, which my very good friend Barry Guerrero said is actually pretty good in the South, and he's right, it is, because it sounds sort of like Richard Strauss. It's the opening of Don Juan and Ein Heldenleben smushed together. That's what the opening of In the South is. And Vienna plays Strauss really well, and so they play this very well. But the Enigma Variations really lacks personality, and the introduction in Allegro is just sort of straight-laced. It's well played, of course, but it's an iffy, so-so kind of like Vienna Phil Elgar disc, and it's just a shame because they probably do wonderful Elgar, but Gardner again does not go for the humor and the character, the sheer character of the Enigma Variations. It's all just very clean and very strict and very, very, very. That's what it is. It's very. Then we have Die lustige Witwe. Talk about the lack of a sense of humor. It's not even a sense of humor. It's done well, and they're all trying. And again, it's some of the singing is excellent. Who do we have here? We have Bryn Terfel is great. As Baron Zeta, and you've got Barbara Bonney and Bo Scovus and Cheryl Studer as the Merry Widow, Hannah Glavari. It's okay. But boy, it just needs more charm. It needs to relax. It needs to wink and grin and, be cute even. No, not that. But this was fabulous. This is the Granger Disc that they did with that's got all of the sort of choral and orchestral things, Danny Boy and other Granger favorites, fabulously sung and played. And Granger is not a guy who admits of interpretation. You just do it. You do what he wrote, and you do it as well as you can, and it comes out sounding fabulous because they're all folk song arrangements anyway. And this is great. This is another one of Gardner's high point. You notice how a lot of these best things he did are on Philips. That's why which is now Decca, which is why the Decca box will be so interesting when it comes, because it will have all of that stuff and more. There will be more. And it really, I think that's where Gardner's best work is, for the most part, aside from the Mozart operas he did for Archive and some of the earlier music, the Monteverdi and some of that stuff. And some of the Haydn masses, some, not all. Then we've got this Anne-Sophie von Otter Kurt Weill thing, The Seven Deadly Sins, and then a bunch of songs with Bengt Forsberg at the piano. This is one of his NDR productions. I just don't think Von Otter is right for this. I mean, Gardner's accompaniment is fine, but Anna Sophie Von Otter, she's not decadent and smarmy and she just, I grew up on Gisela Mai. What can I say? A real, honest to God, East German, card-carrying Marxist chanteuse with one of those slightly wrecked, like tobacco, whatever voices. I mean, my voice is slightly wrecked too, but not from tobacco. But that's what you need. You've got these. I know that Weill wrote it for Lotte Lenya, and Lotte Lenya was a soprano, and all of that's true. But she was a soprano who had the style, and you just got to have some. Meine Schwester und ich stammen aus Louisiana, wo die Wasser des Mississippi und der Monte fließen. I mean, it's got to have that world-weary decadence. And for all that she tries, I don't think Anna Sophie Von Otter does world-weary decadence as well as others have. Although she's a wonderfully gifted singer, and she sings beautifully, and she does characterize it. She does, but it needs more. That's what I'm saying. All right, and then we end it. How do we end it? Oh yeah, this was a lot of fun too. This was the Stravinsky Symphony of Psalms with Lily Boulanger stuff. Some of her choral music. And this is it's a beautiful disc. Very, very nicely done. It's with the Monteverdi Choir and the London Symphony Orchestra. And, of course, the Stravinsky is absolutely perfectly suited to Gardner's cool neoclassical approach anyway. So that's disc 30. And that's the whole set. And I think you can see very, very clearly that there are many, 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 many more hits than misses here. This is a joy, most of this stuff. There really is. And you can see very clearly what Gardner's pluses and minuses are, his strengths and weaknesses as an interpreter. I have no issue with this, and I give him full props for the great work that he's done on many of these discs. And especially in his advocacy of repertoire like Gluck. Pardon me, I'm just trying to get these things in here so they don't all fall out again. And, composers who just haven't gotten the kind of treatment and attention that they deserve, and he does them beautifully. He does them absolutely beautifully, and so I have no problem giving him all the credit in the world for the fine things he's recorded. I just think, as usual, there are way, way, way too many of them, and way too many of them that are just okay, that are just good, that don't play to his strengths, because like all of these artists, he has no concept of what his strengths and weaknesses are. He thinks everything he does is God's gift to music, and it isn't. It just isn't. That's the way it goes. That's the way these people are. And if you throw piles and piles of money at them and tell them they can do whatever they want, and why don't they just do everything, they'll say, okay, I'll do everything, and it's all going to be equally wonderful. And that's why we, the critics, are necessary, and you, the discerning listeners, are just as necessary. And that's why this box is out of print, while I suspect some of those other ones may be sitting around for a while. That's the way the coffee crumbles, or the cookie table, I don't know, what the cookie crumbles, whatever that phrase is. You would think that the record labels would understand that, the knowledgeable listeners out there, and even beginners, even you folks who are just starting, you know what's good and what isn't. You just know you're musical. You love music. You could tell the difference. So there you go. In any case, keep on listening, folks. Let's make America classical again. Thank you for joining me, and take care.